Today, we're going to be chatting about elevating your presence in our beautiful community of Syracuse and a few tools that you can use to attract talented workers and how This is CNY can help you do that. My name is Katrina Tulloch. I'm the editor of This is CNY. I'm a video journalist at Syracuse.com. I've been here 11 years, and I am so excited to moderate this exciting chat with two powerhouses in business, leadership, journalism in our community. First, I will introduce Ben Sios, Center State CEO's Chief of Staff and Senior Vice President of Strategy, Policy, and Planning. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I'll also introduce our fearless leader at Syracuse.com and the Post-Standard, the regional president of Advanced Media New York, Tim Kennedy. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Katrina. Thank you for volunteering and moderating this panel. Good morning, Ben. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning.
We're feeling good? Ready to talk about some business?
Why not?
Good. Good. Listen, we're elevating our community presence because we've got a massive moment heading our way. Tim and Ben are pillars of innovation and leadership in Syracuse, playing pivotal roles in championing initiatives to drive economic growth in our area. So we are in great hands to talk about the why now. And our region is buzzing with this rare opportunity we have with Micron choosing Clay, New York for their next chip-making plant. And this is the result of hundreds of hours of work and communication, strategic political pieces falling into place. And Ben, there has been endless discussion about the impact of this investment in Central New York, but can you just take us back, give us some context, paint us a picture of the Micron moment and why now is so important to talk about our next decades of economic growth?
Sure. So thanks, Katrina. Thanks for putting this on. I think this is really important. And frankly, we talk a lot about the Micron moment, and people always say, I'm sick of hearing about Micron. I just want them to build the dang thing and start hiring and have all that positive economic impact that we keep talking about so much. But there's a reason that we talk about the Micron moment so much. There's a lot of reasons, and I'm going to put on my economist hat for a second, but I think really importantly, people should be aware that this project is the biggest project in United States history, or one of the biggest projects. There's a handful of megafabs that are being put together right now, excuse me, and most of those megafabs are going to places like Phoenix, Arizona, Austin, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, and then little old Syracuse, New York. Now, one of these things is not like the other, and it's Syracuse, right? All those places have had significant population growth over the past decades. They've had significant job growth over the past decades. Syracuse is the only community that has not experienced that. In fact, over the past 25 years, we've actually seen our labor force, the amount of people that are either employed or seeking employment, the labor force decline by about 8%, which is about 30,000 workers. Right. And the past decade, that number is really just stagnated. It hasn't gone up significantly, hasn't declined significantly. So we say, what is going to be the impact that Micron brings to the community? And one of the major impacts that Micron will bring is the immediate jobs they create. Right. We've talked about these numbers of 8,000 direct jobs and 41,000 or 42,000 additional induced jobs through supply chain and other methods. But the really important piece of that is the fact that Syracuse is now on the map, and the fact that we should be able to, and we're going to need to fill those jobs. Now, you've got kind of opposing graphs here, right? A declining labor force and this need to fill these Micron jobs. And you layer on top of that, if you look at the job board on This is CNY, which we're going to take a look at in a minute, there's 4,600 job openings for companies hiring in Central New York right now. So those things don't seem to match up right. Right. But it's actually, in our minds, the best opportunity we have in the community to grow the labor force from a meaningful perspective. And what does that mean and what does that look like? There's a lot of ways to grow labor force. Probably the most traditional and the one that we talk about a lot and the one that we're great at in Central New York is graduating kids from college and universities. Right. Where we have fantastic colleges and universities, 35 in our immediate area, churning out many students that could eventually work with Micron. But there's two other ways that people enter the labor market. I don't know why that happened, so sorry. They I will stop using hand signals so you don't get any more balloons. They entered the labor market by coming into the area from outside the area, right? So they're new to Central New York, or they're returning to Central New York, or they entered the labor market by coming off the sidelines, getting re-employed, re-entering the labor force for any reason that they've been out. And I can say that we're doing great in two of those areas. We're doing great in the getting people off the sidelines and into work. And there's a recent investment from the governor for the new on-ramp program to invest $200 million in getting people off the sidelines and into jobs like Micron, but all other advanced manufacturing and construction jobs. And we're really good at training students for the jobs that we have right now and the jobs of tomorrow. What we're not great at, what we've never been very good at least for the past couple of decades, is bringing new people into the area from outside the area and doing that significantly. So probably the most important impact for Micron is we anticipate, just because of their presence and their hiring and all the activity associated with it, that our population in Central New York, the most conservative estimate, is going to increase to 75,000 people over the next 30 years. So not all those people add to the labor force, not all those people add to the labor market, but many of them do. And many of them we hope will bring this shot in the arm to the entire economy of new workers here in the community, not just working at Micron, but working at other companies like all of the companies on here today, because people are beginning to hear about Syracuse, the good, positive things that are happening in Central New York.
It's huge. It's a huge change. And it doesn't mean, Micron is not the only company, as you say here, about to massively grow and need more employees, or even that tech is the only field demanding growth. Tim, our team here at Syracuse.com has constantly covered the need to hire more people in every industry over years: healthcare, hospitality, architecture, innovation, infrastructure. We got a highway that we got to take down. We got a community grid to put up. And to support this growing population, it is going to be such a long road ahead. And are we ready to head down that long road? Because we got a lot we got to get done.
Well, we are. We better be ready. We're at the beginning. Long road is a good way to put it. I think Ben mentioned the Micron moment. That we are in beginning, and it's going to be a Micron decade is really what it's going to end up being. I think even though we are, a couple of years out from having the fabs and even a year out here from having construction full blown, the labor market is tight in Central New York right now. For each company, that's a competitive advantage question. So Ben covered some of the statistics. We're unemployment in the areas, 3 to 4%. Industries, healthcare or higher education, they were been struggling with workforce issues for years. And looking at, Ben, I was looking at the Center State CEO, the great local economic survey that you do every year. And 20% of the businesses reported that they plan to add 20 plus jobs in 2024. 14% said they were going to add 50 plus jobs. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of companies, small, mid-sized companies that are planning to expand their workforce before we even get to Micron. Before we even get to Micron and the supply chain and all the things that we're writing about and talking about, at length at Syracuse.com. So, as Ben mentioned, it's a multi-pronged strategy here. And today we're talking about talent attraction. And it seems to me that at root, talent attraction is really about three things. And, they're not, it's not rocket science here, but I'll speak as though I'm somebody, say, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that is looking to move and looking at a job board, looking at a company. And what are those three things? Well, at root, it is, do you have the right job for me, right? What is that job? How does that job fit with my life, where I want to go? What are the opportunities? So if you are a hiring professional, a business owner, the first question is, do you have the right job? Do I have the right pay, the benefits, and those kinds of things? The second piece is, are you the right company? What is your company like? What is the culture? What are the people? What are the managers? What do people say about you? And is your company a good place to work? What does your LinkedIn profile look like? And those two, the first two things of the three, are things that we've done and every company has done, for years and years and years. It's really the third thing that, if we're talking about talent attraction outside of Central New York, the third thing is this the right place? So again, you're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What do you know about Syracuse? What do you know about the central New York community? What is that place like to live? And it has been, and it's a bit of a paradox because I think that third thing of the three pillars here, do you have the right job? Are you the right company? Is this the right community? This third one creates a bit of a paradox because I think historically it had always been the case that the larger employers in town, Upstate Medical Hospital, Syracuse University, Lockheed Martin, they had to go out and they had to tell that story. Now, everybody's got to tell that story, right? And it is a story because if you're a 10-person shop and you're looking for the right person, that right person may be in, again, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You've got to attract that person. And now you've got to be a part of telling that story. So there's a paradox here because these big organizations tried to do this themselves, but we really have to band together. No one enterprise, no one company can really solve that problem themselves. And that's where we've got to come together, whether you're a large employer, whether you're a small employer, 5 people in your shop, whatever it is, everybody needs to sort of desperately band together to solve this problem of how do we tell the story? How do we let people know that this is a great community to live? This is a great community to work. This is a great community to raise a family. And that's really what we're trying to do with this. This is CNY. So, talent, the long road is here. We are at the beginning of the long road. Talent attraction is really about those 3 things. Do you have the right job? Are you the right company? Is this the right place? And for us to tell that story about are we the right place, we really need to band together to do that as a community.
That's it exactly, Tim. We got to hire now. Bottom line, we got to hire now. In order to hire, you got to attract people to this area. And that means meeting the moment. It means showing people this is an incredible place to live. It means celebrating our wins and maybe defending Syracuse in a way that we as a city have not done before, right, Ben? I mean, I remember when this survey first came out and we were looking about how people define the top quality of life for them when they're looking for a new place to live, when they're looking for a new job. What do they want? What do they search for? And so when you're talking to the folks at Center State, when you're in the circles that you're in, what hesitations, I guess, do you hear about growth happening here? I mean, is Syracuse, do we have to totally adjust our attitude and change our mindset to get rid of that chip on our shoulder?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely have that chip on our shoulder, right? And actually, I think to a degree, the chip on our shoulder benefits us. And I can say when we were first courting Micron and sitting down across the negotiating table with their team, one thing that their team shared with us later that they came away from those initial meetings was just the care and understanding that we all had in Central New York and the community and the civic pride that we have. Yes, we have a chip on our shoulder. Yes, if you go on where Syracuse eats, there's people complaining about things. Most of them are complaining about food on where Syracuse eats. But, I think a lot of people assume because for a while there's this malaise in the community that people don't care. And actually, I think it's the other way around. I think there was a malaise, and sometimes you saw negative comments on social media because people actually do care. And you don't see that everywhere. You don't see the fact that, when there is positive economic news in the newspaper and in other newspapers, people really stand up and I think are super supportive of those things. One anecdote, when Micron announced, and Micron put on their LinkedIn page, their own LinkedIn page, which is an open page, when they announced that they're coming to Central New York, and they put the press release up. I was tracking that LinkedIn page, and I was very worried because I was waiting for the person to say, why the heck did you choose Syracuse? And I was hoping I didn't recognize the person that said it on there. And I was anticipating someone saying, oh, it's too snowy here. Our infrastructure is getting old. We need to reinvest, something like that. And there ended up being like 800 comments on that one post from Micron. I tracked it pretty regularly. And every single one of those comments was positive. Every single one. Now, not everybody that commented on that post was from Syracuse, but I saw so many posts from a lot of people I know that on that Micron post saying, welcome to Syracuse. We'd love to have you here. It's great here. It's a great community. We're so excited to welcome you throughout. And that was the first time I was like, wow, people actually do care. sometimes they may, in February, they may complain a little bit, but they actually do care. So the things we hear from employers are the things that we've heard for forever. The quality of life is a great thing that people care about when they make a decision to move, and when they actually move here, that's why they stay. Affordability of housing, the housing options you have. If you want to live in the country, you can live in the country and still work in downtown Syracuse and get to downtown Syracuse in 20 minutes. You can't do that in Columbus. You can't do that in Austin. And you can't do that in Phoenix. I can tell you that. I don't even know if there is country in Phoenix. It's desert, right? Oh, there's another thing. I got to turn that off. So I think that, and the things that people traditionally complain about, the seasons, the weather, are stuff that, I'd say if you actually stop somebody on the street and you say, what do you love most about Syracuse? The flip side, people always say, I love the 4 seasons. And if you move to Phoenix, you have 1 season, right? So, there is always a push and pull with some of these things. The thing that keeps people here, the quality of life, as we said, the quality of schools, the housing options, the nightlife and culture. For a small community, we have fantastic nightlife and culture. Not everybody realizes that Syracuse, compared to other communities in upstate New York, it's much smaller, but we rival many of those communities in what we have to offer. Every single week during the summer, there is a party or some sort of festival in Armory or in Clinton Square. And I think people really appreciate that. It takes a little bit to break into the community, understand where those opportunities are and those things to do. But once that does happen, people are here to stay. I can tell you so many conversations that I've had over the years where people that have moved into the area from outside the area. They never came to Syracuse, but they took a chance on a job. And they say, I would never go work anywhere else. I love it here. It's perfect. I raised my family here. I couldn't ask for a better place to live and a better place to raise my family. And I don't want to ever go anywhere else. We hear that time and again from people that have never lived in upstate New York, never had a association with the community. So, I think there are so many positives that we can talk about. And to build off what Tim was saying, a lot of times when you talk about marketing and promotion, one of the best things you can get is earned media, free media, earned PR, right? And we have that right now. And we're not going to have that forever. But when was the last time we saw those headlines on New York Times and some of those other national newspapers? There's actually positive economic news coming out of upstate New York, and it's being recognized by the biggest newspapers in the country. That hasn't happened, at least in my lifetime, and I don't think it's happened in the past 7 decades in Central New York, where there's been positive economic news nationally discussed. And that means that people are beginning to recognize things are changing here, and things are headed in the right direction and are beginning to look up. And in my mind, that is the perfect opportunity for us to capture. That is a perfect opportunity for all of you to capture and use to our benefit. Because at the end of the day, talk a lot about Micron, but Micron is not going to hire significant employees, especially people to work in their fabs, for at least another 18 months. We've got this great window in front of us that Micron will have a presence. There will be more news about them building and growing here. But the actual jobs that are going to be on the street for Micron are not really going to ramp up for a while. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for us and for our other companies that are expanding. TTM, I see Infocon on the phone here. Susan Crossett, who works for CPS, works with these companies all the time. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to hold up those companies, to support them, and for all of you to think about different ways you can get the word out about the great opportunities at your companies.
It's a rare moment. Ben's right. But Ben's from here. Ben has a lot of local pride already because he's from Skinny Atlas, right? But Tim is not. Now, Tim came to us by way of Chicago and Pennsylvania, but also your hometown is Detroit, right, Tim?
That's right, Katrina. Yeah.
What comparisons can you make here to what Detroit has gone through in the last few decades and how you've seen that place change? I mean, is this similar?
Yeah, I will tell. I'll tell 2 stories. I was thinking about this morning. How I came here. I'll be brief. When I was asked about moving to Syracuse and taking over at the Post Standard and putting the Post Standard Syracuse.com together, one of the first things I did, I read a lot about Syracuse on Syracuse.com, try to understand the community. But I also reached out to a good friend of mine, Joe Savage, who grew up here and went to Lemoyne. His family's from here, and Joe immediately, as Central New Yorkers do, said, "Yep, I'll let me come over." He and his wife Suzanne brought maps, and they laid out the community. They showed us where the schools were. They showed us where the districts were. They showed us where people lived, where their friends were. And I was moving here. I had a son who was on his way to college. I had a daughter in grade school, a daughter who was in high school, and we had to quickly figure out where we're going to live. What schools are we going to put our kids in? And I had a fairly large job at the time, putting together Syracuse.com and the Post Standard. And it struck me that, that kind of sort of inside knowledge and what is this community like, it was a great advantage for me, but I was lucky. I had a friend who grew up here, and not everybody has that, and that doesn't scale, right? So, we need to be able to tell that story without having our own personal chaperones to lead us through the process. You asked me about my first impressions. I did grow up in Detroit in the aftermath of the sort of the auto industry collapse. And when I grew up in Detroit, you graduated from school and pretty much everybody left Detroit. And there were different starts and restarts at a renaissance. But it wasn't until very recently that you see Detroit again had its Micron moment. It had its national moment coming out of bankruptcy. The downtown Detroit area has boomed. There are jobs. There is a growth. There is a personality there, and that didn't exist when I was coming out of school. So again, now you fast forward to today, and Ben had mentioned a few minutes ago, one of our great assets is our college graduates. There's a lot of great colleges in the Detroit and the Michigan area. Now students, they don't all immediately move to Chicago or New York or somewhere else. They want to stay in Detroit. You see people moving into Detroit. And so, what's the lesson there? I think I see that similarity. We're early stages, I would say, but you see a couple of things. One, when I look at downtown Syracuse today compared to when I moved here 12 years ago, I don't think you could argue that Syracuse is not a better place. The downtown area is much more vibrant. The restaurant scene, what's going on. Ben, you mentioned the festivals that happen in the summer. Having that cultural anchor is so important to a community because, as we talked about, it's not only about attracting talent, but as Ben said, and I'm this way, right? Once people come here, you're like, all right, why would I leave, right? And I think that having those cultural attractions is what leads people to not only want to come here, but to stay here. And so I think back to my Detroit analogy, that sort of reintegration of the city and the cultural institutions that were saved there and expanded there are, again, lead to sort of that reintegration into the community and become foundational for people thinking about, is this a good place for me to live? In Syracuse, I see we are on that same path. We are on that same trajectory. I would argue, you think about the sort of cultural institutions we have here. You think about the amphitheater out on the lake, right? And Katrina, you've been out there a bunch. We've all been out there a bunch. I don't know if there is a more beautiful outdoor, theater in the country at sunset and a beautiful concert on Onondaga Lake. It's just a fabulous thing. And those are, for a city our size, those cultural assets are so important. They keep us here. They attract people here. And I think that's the lesson when you look at cities around, again, the Midwest, the Northeast, where they've been able to undergo this sort of transition and renaissance. It's built on growth. It's built on community pride, and it's built on terrific cultural institutions that add to the quality of life, and they lead people to say, "Hey, that's a special place. I didn't know that Central New York, was founded on salt. I didn't know that Central New York, was, at the hub on the Erie Canal. I didn't know that Central New York was, a great manufacturing base for so many years." There's a lot about our community and a great story to tell. And I think those are all add to add to that sort of attraction. And they all, again, come back to me and thinking about how I got here and what this community means to me and to us now.
I love how you say that then and now. That, I mean, even long before you got here, I just looked in our archives for some photos of downtown Syracuse from 1990. Oh my gosh, mostly parking lots, right? I mean, look at where the On Center is now. I mean, right here on the left, I mean, that was Armory Square, like right over there on the side is the most. And now you look at it today and it's buildings. You walk down the street, it's people. You've got Salt Market anchoring one corner of downtown. You've got so much development all across the city. And to Tim's point, it's a comeback story. Syracuse has a story to tell, and it's a comeback story. And I love how I love how you described how maybe our chip on our shoulder is a good thing. That maybe after so many cold winters and dwindling population before and job loss before, we've developed this survivor mentality almost, that we've evolved as a city to be scrappy, to be hungry, to want more, to want better. And you see that even in just the infrastructure of our history. Like we had roads going right through Clinton Square for so many years, right? And now you go there, it's a fountain. It's a place where festivals happen. It's a place where people gather. That alone, that was such a major step forward for our city. And we have a great life here. Just echoing what Tim and Ben have said, but our natural resources, we are a climate haven. We have great water. We have a great power grid. We have an ideal proximity to major metropolitan areas, affordable housing, great place to raise families, proud, diverse community, and we are on the upswing. So we can talk about the high quality of life. There's a picture of the amphitheater that Tim's mentioning. So all of this is great, but our problem is we as a city have not always been great at telling our story. So that's where this is CNY comes in. That's why we're talking here today. That's why we've created this team effort between Center State CEO and Advanced Media New York, Syracuse.com. We've come up with a rather aggressive solution, and this is CNY. Ben, why did you even partner with us in the first place? Why did
Okay,
this start?
so 6 years ago, we were hearing from many of our members at Center State that companies were struggling to hire, companies were struggling to tell the story about the community. They were able to find people on LinkedIn and Indeed outside the area, but they're really having trouble converting those people coming in into yeses, into actually landing them as employees. And that was 6 years ago. So pre-pandemic, pre-Micron, obviously. And so we launched at the time, the Good Life CNY program, which has now evolved into the CNY, right? But we at Center State knew we were good at some things, marketing and wide-scale promotion of the region storytelling. That's not necessarily our expertise. So when we were beginning to think about, okay, what does the community need? How do we help companies be more successful in telling the story about the community and getting the positive economic message about the community out of the community? Who's the best? Who makes the most sense for us to partner with? And it was pretty easy. It was our friends at Advanced Media. So we actually launched an effort similar to this, or the beginning of this, about 5 or 6 years ago, in partnership with Tim and some of the folks at Advanced Media to do exactly this: begin to tell the story about the community. And I'd say that the interesting thing back then, 6 years ago, we did not have a good product to sell. Full disclosure. We were pushing a boulder uphill, trying to communicate to others, communicate outside the community about why it makes sense to live here, raise a family here, retire here, grow here. We didn't have a great message to tell. And that message became easier to tell during the pandemic. It was a slight difference. People didn't want to be in big cities anymore. People didn't want to be paying, $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. They wanted space. They wanted, grass. They wanted fresh air. So we saw a huge bump during the pandemic of people thinking about moving back here, actually taking the step of moving back here, joining companies that are here, working remotely here. And so we had that initial bump with the pandemic. And right after the pandemic is when we began to work in earnest on Micron. So The pandemic was great. Did the pandemic significantly increase the population in Central New York? No. Will Micron and the presence of Micron and everything that will come with it? Yes. Every single conservative model that we talked about earlier is telling us that we will have significant population impact. And that's not just going to be people that, get their pay stub for Micron. It's going to be people that come to the community for a variety of reasons. They might be a spouse of someone working at Micron, or they might be the kid that is the kid of a construction worker who helps build the fabs. One of the interesting things that I don't think a lot of people talk about is in the construction space, we're going to be building these things for the next decades. In some instances, somebody could have their entire career just building fabs at Micron, entire construction career. Yeah. It's not like you go and build a bridge and then you move on to the next bridge. You could actually be working on constructing things at Micron if everything goes well for the next decades. So think about all the families and the kids and spouses of those people that are going to come to the community, or that we're going to train up to work on this construction fab. So, I think it made a whole lot of sense, and the best way for us to, really activate this mouthpiece that we want to talk about our community, to provide that welcoming front door to people that know a little bit about Syracuse, have never heard of Syracuse, but are hearing about it now, or those boomerangers, right? The people that used to be here, went to school in upstate New York, or have lived in a place where there's four seasons. So, we see a lot of interest on people that, lived and worked in Minneapolis because it's a similar climate. That was really the ultimate reason that we decided to work with our friends at Advanced Media.
And Tim, we've got news sites that share all of this news and always have on Syracuse.com, on New York Upstate. We've always covered the good news happening in our area. We've always covered business. But in your eyes, how is This Is CNY different?
Well, good question. I think when Benj mentioned 6 years ago, and when this came up, I think, as you mentioned, Katrina, Syracuse.com, the Post Standard, we cover the festivals, we cover what it's like to live here, but we do a lot of other things. And in this sort of digitized, on-demand world, having a singular place that we could focus on the good stories, the stories of what the neighborhoods are like, what it's like to live here. Real estate, right? Go through the list of what is on This Is CNY. Having a central place where a company could access, where we could promote to outsiders what it's like here. And that's really what we're trying to do, is capture the personality, answer questions, be that concierge digitally for someone who's thinking about, well, what would my life be like if I did move to Syracuse? So we knew we told those stories. We know if we made some investments, we could tell more of those stories, and importantly, put it in an environment where it could be accessed by a digital audience, where companies in the community could access it, promote it, use it, where we could partner with our friends at Center State and say, at many of their events, hey, go to the site, use this site, push this out to your friends, use it with your HR recruiting efforts. And give us feedback. So, we knew that we could package it and put it in a singular place. And as Ben said, we did, a nice job for a number of years. And we decided, look, this is, as we said, this sort of Micron moment. The need is not going away. The need is only going to become more pressed. And we liked the success that we had, but we know we need to do more. And that's why we created This Is CNY. So I'll flip the script, Katrina, and you're the editor-in-chief at This Is CNY. You've been doing it for, a little while now. How do you see the mission of the site, the stories that you're telling so well, by the way, thank you. And what do you see as how you want to position the site?
Yeah, it's a one-stop shop. I mean, we are, as you said, recovering living, we're covering real estate, commuting, schools. So you can take a zillion different data points for what schools people might want to bring their families to when they move here. If someone in Ohio or Texas is interviewing with TTM or JMIT Wireless or Micron, and they get offered a job, but it's in Syracuse, and you want to know, all right, I got to find the school that's a right fit for my kids. We've got that information. And we at This Is CNY want to take that burden off companies. We'll take it on. We'll tell the story of Central New York. And Ben, we've also got a job board. You mentioned people bringing their spouses, their partners, their families with them. In addition to finding out information about the neighborhoods and the culture, our great life and culture that we talked about today, we've also got information for a number of jobs where people can apply for. And companies here that are on the call right now, how can they make sure that their positions are on this job board?
Yeah, so easy to do. Reach out to us at Center State. I'll share my email in the chat if you're interested in getting your jobs posted here. This is something that is actually there's a lot of job boards out there, a lot of job boards managed by national companies. This one's a little bit of homegrown, and I think importantly, it's just focused on the broader Central New York area. So, city of Syracuse, but also includes our friends in Oswego County and Cortland County and Madison County, and some companies in Tompkins County and Oneida County. But this is a real-time job board, right? So every single morning, this updates with when you post a job to your own job board. This scrapes it on and automatically posts it here. And when somebody clicks on a job here, it automatically goes to your site. So what we're doing here is, one, aggregating all of this demand into one spot so people can see, hey, right now there's over 4,500 job openings in Central New York at great companies. And two, it's pushing more talent directly to your job boards, to your companies. So we get questions all the time of, how many people did you individually give me and that I hired as part of this effort? And the answer is, we are bringing more visibility and attention, one, on your companies that you are hiring, and two, directly on your job. So when somebody clicks your job on your job board and clicks to apply, it's possible that they found it because of the work that we've done as part of this.
Yeah.
Ben, I would add just real quickly too. I think some of the research we did, again, this is somewhat related to the bit of a paradox that I talked about earlier. But you think about a candidate that's out there. Not only do they want to know, is the job right? Go to our job board, but they also want to know, well, what other jobs are like that in the community? Yeah. And we've seen that in our research when we've done research to look at what if you're a candidate prospect. What are the things that would attract you to a community? Would necessarily be important to you? And the number of jobs, similar jobs, and if you think of it, it just makes sense, right? You're going to come up here for an engineering job. Well, how many engineering jobs are there? What's the breadth and what's the depth of those positions? And again, I think that's something that you can see, and this is CNY on the job board, and we've gotten feedback that's important. And again, that's not anything that one company can solve, because that is the totality of how many jobs and how many positions and what's important to attract talent to our community. It's breadth and it's depth of good quality jobs at really good companies that have great cultures.
Absolutely. There's a big difference from hearing all of this from a local resource rather than only the company's HR rep, right?
Yeah.
And when an HR person is talking to you about an open position, they're getting you to join the company, not the whole community. And that's what we want to offer here. And so step one, when we talk about elevating your community presence, number one, make sure your jobs are on here. Make sure you're part of this board. So we talk about the optimistic voice that we have, that we're interested in showcasing stories that constantly show our high quality of life, the quality of our people, our housing opportunities. But also there are so many opportunities for folks on this call to talk about their own journeys, to give stories, to share testimonials about leadership, about their companies, about their work. I also definitely shout out the partners that have already been working with us up until this point, who have been absolutely wonderful. Tim, people can come to me if they've got story ideas. People can come to me if they've got testimonials. But how can those joining us today get involved as partners, as corporate partners?
Well, they can as Ben said, they can reach out to Ben. They can reach out to me. I think we have another slide with Kim Robeson and some of the folks on our team that can handle those inquiries. I think that we're available. Certainly, any of those contacts, and point here too is, while we're certainly looking for sponsors, and I think that the community is going to be better. We can better tell this story the more sponsors and the more participation we have. Just encourage everyone, if you're on the call, if you're a recruiter, if you're HR professional in a company, a local company. Take a look, get involved, use This Is CNY, post it on your social, push it out there. and give us feedback. What other stories do we need to tell? How can we highlight the things that you think make this community a special place? That's what we're trying to do here. It's available for everyone. The more folks we have that help us sponsor, the more resources we have to really do the hard work that we have to do to get the word out. But as Ben said, as we talked about a couple of times, it's a moment. It's a national moment. People understand. You see that heartbeat in the middle of Central New York on our logo. People are increasingly understanding where Central New York is. It's not in Central Park, and where and what the whole Syracuse community is all about. And I think pushing this out and giving us feedback and contacting us and being a real partner with us is really going to help this project and help us with what we need to do to be successful with this Micron moment.
Beautiful. Yeah, great point to end on, Tim. And we definitely encourage you, invest your time, your thought, and your resources into these efforts now to elevate your presence in the region. I mean, this means telling your story. We've got so many examples already on This is CNY from terrific leaders, and shakers in business who have already been speaking to Marie, who writes our leadership columns, and other reporters who care deeply about what Central New York is going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. And the more you put your story out there, we can all elevate this region together. Syracuse has everything going for it, so let's not miss this moment. And I do see the chat blowing up a little. So I'm going to stop sharing and invite Lindsay to read a couple of comments that our moderators might be able to, or our guests might be able to speak to.
As she's getting ready to do that, can I just make a couple final points? We've talked a lot about, we say CNY, some people sometimes associate that just with the city of Syracuse. And I want to be very clear that the work that we're doing, the companies that are involved in this, the things that we want to be promoting as part of this is really the 5-county region, and includes some companies from Tompkins County and Oneida County, as I said. There's beautiful progress being made throughout the broader 5-county region. We know as part of a lot of housing analysis we're doing right now with the state on the impact of Micron, that the impact of Micron is very much not just going to be in Onondaga County and Central New York, right? If you look at the city, or the village of Phoenix is closer to the Micron site than downtown Syracuse. So there's fantastic opportunity for people in Oswego County. I know they've done a whole lot of organizing there. And also, there's a lot of those communities through, I think, some investments from the state, but also just a lot of local investment that have really turned around their downtowns like Syracuse. So if you go to downtown Portland these days, you go to downtown Oswego these days, they are beautiful, a little smaller than Syracuse, but beautiful places. And honestly, great places to live with affordable housing as well. So that is the message that we want to keep telling, that there's a diversity of options, there's a diversity of employment options, there's great employers in all parts of the community here. There was also a comment from Hugo that I want to address directly.
Yes, please.
Because Hugo,
hey, Ben, before you do that, I just I'll make there's a good point to be made here about we talk about the 5-county region in Central New York, but one of the Micron moment things that's happening too is just the regional collaboration. The quality of life here doesn't end at the 5 counties. We talk about the Adirondacks, we talk about what there is to do upstate, and certainly the regional collaboration that we've seen between Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse, which is new, which is groundbreaking. Again, I think that's important from a talent attraction, because the more we look at how we collaborate, what's available, how we all bring our best assets to play to attract companies and people, that all plays a part. And that, again, if you're new or not familiar with Central New York and you're on this, you're part of the audience, that's new. That is sort of, we're in the first innings of that. And that is all contributing to making this place what it is today and what it's going to be in 10 years. That's an important point. Sorry to cut you off, Ben.
No problem. So directly address what Hugo in the comments said about, and Hugo, it's not opening a can of worms at all. I think it's something we should address and we should talk about head on. But how are we making sure that the work we're doing through this, but also other work that we're doing to bring more people into the labor force and to provide them with the opportunities and support they need to be successfully employed, people from all backgrounds, people from all life experiences, and specifically people from disinvested communities and traditionally marginalized populations. That is embedded in every single thing that we do at Center State. I think, as you know, Hugo, as part of this, if you look throughout the site at the individuals and the faces that we are featuring as part of our testimonials, we have a specific premium on presenting the community in a way that it's not just people that look like me talking outside of the community about the opportunities here. We have been very intentional to make sure we have diverse voices, diverse stories, and diverse experiences as we present who we are in Central New York, talking outside the area. Yep. We also, through programs like Generation Next, and Daria mentioned a great program with the Cruise Culture program, have additional initiatives and activities here for somebody that lands here and wants to figure out how they find their people, how they find a welcoming community for them. We need to do more work in that space. We always need to do more work in that space, but we have some great programs that kind of shut down a little bit during the pandemic that we're looking to bring back online, so that when people land here and they say, hey, I'm working at this firm and I really want to find, people that have the same life experience with me, how do I do that? We will have resources for that. I also want to say, really important, the entire on-ramp program, all of the investment that New York State and Micron is making in the workforce development side of things, especially when we talk about training for technician jobs, but training to get people onto pathways into good jobs, all of that is dedicated on individuals from traditionally marginalized communities, traditionally marginalized populations, traditionally marginalized neighborhoods. All of that funding is dedicated, and we will actually be putting physical investment in programming and space in the neighborhoods that need it the most. So I want to assure you, Hugo, that we think about this every single day. I don't know if we're ever going to be 100% successful, but it is the prime directive for all of us as we think about how do we make sure we capture this Micron opportunity for everybody, and not just for the people that have traditionally benefited from these kind of investments, but for everybody in Central New York that wants to play.
Ben, I would add we could probably do a webinar about that topic. There is so much going on in a lot of organizations, and we're involved in a lot of those conversations about how do we, you're convening groups together, you're being asked to lead on this. How do we energize? How do we get the word out to achieve that? It's certainly complementary to what we're doing at This is CNY. We talk a lot about how do we play in that space, if you will, or how do we tell those stories? It's an important topic that probably is worthy of its own webinar.
Get that one on the calendar, right?
Yeah.
I really want to thank Krista in the chat too, as I'm catching up on the questions and the comments. I'm realizing they're mostly comments because Krista asked everyone, hey, can you just drop what your role is? What's your industry here? And we're seeing that it's not just hiring managers or tech industries, it's PR, it's marketing, it's, oh my gosh, recruiting, architecture, so many different kinds of business. Eric Hart, who created the Syracuse City flag, let's go. I mean, this is the wonderful diversity of industry that we talk about, but I love what Ben said about just diversity in terms of the folks who are going to be taking these jobs, who are going to be coming to work here, and also folks from all across America. One person mentioned, was it Kasha, that you moved here from Phoenix 2 years ago, and it's been a great move for your family. Reach out to me, Kasha. I want to hear from you. I want to do stories about people who have moved from out of state and who have found, hi, I see you waving. I want to hear more from you. So I want to thank all of you so much for being here today. And is there any final thoughts you want to leave with us, Tim or Ben, before we send people on their way?
Well, again, since there are a lot of folks on the front line in this talent attraction issue or opportunity, reach out to me, reach out to Ben, reach out to Katrina. We are happy to help, to tell you what we're trying to do, to help figure out how we can help you or your recruiter, your recruiting firm, your strategy. Our goal here is to complement, as we talked about before, what needs to happen for us to, to successfully attract people here. We have great companies. We have a lot of great jobs. We got to tell our story, and we're here to help.
The final thing I'll say is, it takes resources to put this on. We're always looking for additional partners to help us with that. But there's a lot of free things that you can do today to help with this work. You can follow us on social media. All of the links, we may have shared those already. You can embed any of the things that come out of This Is CNY on your career page. You can reshare them on your own social media. We encourage everybody to do that. We want this to be out there. We want this to be on the community. We want to make sure that folks are getting eyeballs on this. And the final thing, we kind of mentioned this a little bit, but more intentionally, you've got a good testimonial. You know somebody that moved here from outside the area and that loves it and would be great on camera as a ambassador. We want to hear from you. We want to feature that person. As I said before, we love to feature diverse faces and diverse voices on those. It doesn't need to be somebody that just moved here from Phoenix. I said Phoenix a lot today, but it can be a boomerang or somebody that lived in New York City for a while and decided to come back. We want to get as many of those stories as possible. So yes, there are ways that we're looking for additional resources to support this. That was not the point of this webinar. The point of this webinar is to make sure you all know there are resources out there you can use today to help us tell that story. As we said, make sure you reach out to me, Tim, Katrina. We've got a lot of ways we can assist. We want to make sure we're doing so. We really appreciate everybody taking the time on a Thursday morning.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Tim, for sharing your perspectives. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Katrina Tellig. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And do not be strangers. Contact us anytime. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Goodbye.